الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على رسوله الكريم وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله أما بعد. Inshallah, continuing on what we started last week as introduction on Usul Fiqh, introduction to the principles, the foundations of Fiqh. Last week we just did introduction about what is fiqh or usul fiqh, its topic in general. And the nature of these classes, we're not going to use one kitab. We're going to go over the topics in a way, inshallah, makes it easier and to remove the difficulty. Otherwise, we said before, books have already been covered on this topic. Some of the beginner ones, Al-Fajr, he already did on Waraqat al-Juwayni. And we did before Qawaid Fiqhiyya, Risala al-Latifa of Shaykh al-Sa'adi and others. But what we're trying to focus on this series is to take some of these qawaid, the principles, usuliyya, make them easy to understand, applicable. Because tatbiq, that's the key, application. Otherwise, usul al-fiqh will remain an amr nadari, an affair which is all theoretical, not applicable. The second thing we also want to avoid is the complication. For one of the reasons why usul al-fiqh is difficult is because the usuliyun, many of the legal theorists, they made the wording they used in their books very challenging. Hence many people, they didn't understand what was intended. And sometimes we said that this was done by some of them as a way to exclude others from the subject. So to go back to the prophetic way, last week we spoke about going back to the way of the Salaf in Usul al-Fiqh, in every subject. We go back to the Quran and Sunnah. And the deen is easy. The deen is easy. So some ulama, they mention usul al-fiqh like any other ulum, any other ilm in ulum Islamiyya. It's easy. It's easy. It's not hard. Inshallah ta'ala. So today we'll cover a little bit in every week like this, and we'll look at practical examples. And the goal then is to make sure we understand the concepts. So some of the terminologies we're using, the way in which I'll be describing it, or the way in which I'll make you understand, is to just bring it easier to understand. So if some of the technical words, the terminologies, we'll ignore them. Because it's not going to benefit someone if he doesn't have even the marhalatul fahm, there's no tasawwur, he has no concept of what he's talking about. So what we'll do is then we'll talk about the issues in an easy way. And Nabi Abbas radiallahu anhu narrates, Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, he said, Allimu wa yassiru. Teach and make it easy. Allimu wa yassiru. And that's the goal. Knowledge should be easy. And it should be understood. Because if we just talk the way the ulama did, or in the books, we'll benefit, but not as much. To begin, we should begin with a couple examples to show you in today's topic. Today we'll be talking about the ahkam, rulings. And in Islam we have two types of rulings. Ahkam al-taklifiyya and ahkam al-wada'iyya. Okay, so today we're talking about ahkam, rulings, and their types. Ahkam is the plural of hukum, a ruling. Ahkam al-taklifiyya and ahkam al-wada'iyya. Right? Just the idea, we're going to break it down today. The best way to do it, we'll begin with examples. Scenario number one. Imagine a man prays towards other than the qibla due to negligence. Then, according to the ulama, his salah is invalid. A man prays negligence, out of negligence. He prays towards other than the qibla. The fatwa, the ruling, salah is invalid. Okay? And now imagine another scenario. A man, he prays towards pictures. A room full of pictures. It's not a haja, wala darura. He just goes and prays in there. He could have prayed anywhere else. The ulama say salah is valid, ma'al ithim. Why? That's today's subject. See, you follow me? Pray towards other qibla, out of negligence, invalid. Pray towards pictures, with negligence, salah valid, ma'al ithim. Okay, that's one scenario. And we're going to get to why that happens. Scenario two. A man divorces his wife during her menses. Then, according to the most correct Islamic opinion, it doesn't count. There's difference of opinion. But some scholars say it does, some say they don't. Another example. A man divorces his wife when she's not on her menses, nor did he have intimacy with her, but she doesn't know about the divorce. The divorce is still valid. Why? Right? A man divorces his wife. She's not in state of menses. He didn't have intimacy with her. She doesn't even know about it. She's still divorced. Why? It's that second scenario. Right? We have to answer these questions. How? The first example, we said divorced when she's on her menses or after intimacy. The more correct opinion is valid, even though it's different opinion. Second one, it counted. Third example, a man, he steals money. Then he makes umrah. His umrah is valid, but he's sinful. Why? So these three scenarios teach us the importance of ahkam al-taklifiyya wa ahkam al-wada'iyya. If you're asking yourself, well, how did you get those answers? This is today's lesson. Because the reason I'm bringing these examples to help connect the dots. So when someone asks you a question, that's what you're going to do. What kind of hukum is this? What is it? What happened? What did you do wrong? What did you do right? And then you can decide, count, it didn't count. Or sinful, non-sinful. Okay, so we're going to come back to the examples later. I'm not going to rush. We have to first go through the lesson. But some of us are probably wondering, I want to know the answer. Why? Just 1 second. طيب. Ahkam is the plural of the word hukum. Hukum just means a ruling. But whose ruling? Hukmullah. And again, we have to be careful when we say hukmullah, to our best of our ability, for we make a mistake in the hukm of Allah, but we're trying to achieve Allah's ruling. Because the hukum is Allah's ruling. This is Allah's deen. Nobody is allowed to pass a fatwa nor answer a question illa ala kitab wa sunnah wa fahm sahih, representing the hukum, the ruling of Allah. So the reason why this is important, hukum is ruling. Ahkam, plural of rulings. And we said rulings have two types. The first type is called ahkam at-taklifiyya or hukum at-taklifi, which is a ruling that deals with the actions of a person. A simple way. Rulings that deal with the actions of a person. What do we call that? Hukum at-taklifi or ahkam at-taklifiyya. Taklif means legal responsibility. So taklif, we'll talk about next week more. Taklif, mukallaf, what is all this? But hukum taklifi, all it really means, any ruling to do with the actions of a person. Okay, and we're going to come back to these details. Any ruling or the ruling of Allah and the address of Allah, when Allah talks about in the Quran and Sunnah, the ruling pertaining to who? The actions of a person. Person who has taklif. I'm going to explain that in a second. The second type of rulings are called ahkam al-wada'iyya or hukum al-wada'i. Rulings that are wada'i. Wada'i means instituted or legislative or signposts. So wada'i just means to formulate. So you can call them legislative rulings or you can call them rulings which are signposts. Rulings to do with not the actions of an individual, rulings that deal with whether the action is acceptable or not. So ahkam wada'iyya are rules to do with did the action you just did count or not. Alamat wa dalalat, there are signs to show you if it counted or didn't count. Was it correct or incorrect? Do you have to do it or you don't have to do it? That's what ahkam wada'iyya is about. So legislative rulings will tell us when I have to pray, what time I'm going to pray, how I know I prayed, how I know I didn't pray. And ahkam or hukm taklif will tell me who has to pray, what is the ruling on the prayer, what's the ruling on another prayer, like this. So if it has to do with your actions, what do we call it? Hukm taklifi. If it has to do with what comes out of your actions or what's around your actions, hukm wada'i. And don't worry, I'm going to repeat this again and again, but we have to think, if it does with me and you, it's taklifi. What's the responsibility? What's the action about? So some of the ulama, they say, what is hukum? Taklifi, it's Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, legislators ruling or his address in concern or in relation to the actions of the person. And who is the person we're talking about? The people who have taklif. Legally responsible people. Okay, so next week I'm going to talk about who is this person with taklif. But think about it this way. Everybody knows fard, wajib, haram, makruh. What kind of ahkam are those? At-taklifiyya. Why? Because it has to do with your actions and their rulings. So when someone asks you, what's the hukum on this? If he's asking you hukum taklifi, you say wajib, wala mustahab, or mubah, makruh, haram. If someone asks you about the outcome of the action, he's going to ask you about the ruling in pertaining to who has to do it or what happened, or if he didn't do it in terms of sin or not sin. More to do with validity, invalidity. That's hukum or ahkam wada'iyya. So ahkam wada'iyya then are actions or rules, that are signposts to let you know the outcome of the person's action. Simple example, what's the ruling of salah? We're going to say hukum taklifi, the legal ruling from the person who is doing it is wajib, it's obligatory. If somebody prayed with all the conditions, obligations, no nullifiers, no preventatives, salah we call it sahiha, valid. That's wad'i. For every action you can give both. You can give me the wad'i wa taklifi. The first thing we always have to study, or most important study, is ahkam taklifiyya. You want to know is wajib or not. How do you know? But in fiqh, in usul of fiqh, we also have to know the wad'i rulings. Why? Because they precede the action, as we'll see today. Today I'm going to focus on ahkam wad'iyya, for often we don't hear about them a lot. And that's why many of the questions people ask is about those. But before going there, if someone asks you the hukum on something, what are you thinking? The ruling, there's two types. So some of the shuyukh, they say them, أما أحكام or حكم تكليفي هكذا والوضعي هكذا. And then you're wondering, what was this? For example, he went for Hajj with stolen money. حجه الصحيح مع الإثم. إثم حكم تكليفي. صحيح حكم وضعي. خلاص. This you have to understand. So the third scenario, we now understand why the ulama can even do that. You made Hajj with stolen money. So Hajj counts with sin. Right? Someone will say, mashallah, it counts. It's not Hajj Mabrur, brother. It's not Hajj Mabrur. So that's a low ceiling, right? If you're going for that, that's already a problem. You're supposed to go for Hajj Mabrur, right? But the point is, if somebody asked you, for example, I made Hajj with stolen money. See, this is the question. The guy is not going to tell you, can I steal it? He steals it first, made the Hajj and said, Akhi, does it count? So then you're going to be faqih and saying, Ma'al ithim, Akhi. So go back and do Umrah, inshallah, make tawbah. Right? But the point we're getting from this taklif al-wad'i, if it was with me so far, hukum taklifi then, how many categories are there? 5. So we have to list each one. So if you made a chart, ahkam, or rulings, number 1, you have taklifi, legal responsibility, rulings regarding legal responsibility, and rulings regarding legislative or signposts. Wad'iyya you can translate different ways. So you can say legislative rulings or rulings to do with the outcome or the type of action. Underneath ahkam or hukm al-taklifi, we're going to have 5. You have number 1, wajib. So that means obligatory. Or you can call it fard. According to Jumhur ulama, fard and wajib are interchangeable. Except for the ahnaf who call fard different than wajib. But Jumhur, they say fard and wajib is one. So that's just a benefit. Next week we'll talk more about that. Number 2, mustahab, recommended. Or you can call it mandub. Right? So different words, same thing. Mustahab, mandub, sunnah. When we hear all those words, they're all synonyms. We'll talk about that later as well. Third one is mubah, or al-ibaha, or jaiz. Right? These just mean permissible. It's not haram, it's not halal, it's neutral. So some of the scholars, the reason why they didn't often talk about it detail, they said, is mubah a hukm of Allah? Yani in terms of, is it come with commands or prohibitions, or is the asl everything mubah? So we'll talk about it later. Some of the scholars, they take it out from the concept. They know it's there, they just put it down and say because asl is mubah, if it's food, drink. And so the reason why this is important, if there's no ruling against it for it, Allah surah ibaha. Fourth, makruh, disliked. You hear makruh, or the other words for, right? So khilaf al-awla, khilaf al-sunnah. You can hear different ways of saying it. Next week we'll talk more about that as well. And the last one, haram, prohibited, or mahdhur. So when someone asks you hukum of something, usually they're asking you hukum taklifi, right? They're asking you, akhi, is this thing halal or haram? Well, really, that's so we want to move away from that. Because we're studying fiqh, someone asks you halal or haram, you can tell them that, but then it's halal with what category, right? Or haram, what type, right? Because makruh doesn't mean someone should do it, but it's not like haram. We're going to see the levels have meanings. So ahkam taklifiyya are 5. Most of the fiqh that we study is related to that. But for every one of these, there are signposts to allow us to know when something is wajib, mustahab, mubah, makruh, haram. When do I do it? Who has to do it? Or what time? Or when does it count, when it doesn't count? All those are called ahkam wad'iyya. Because if someone told you salah is wajib, that's half the story. I have to pray, but how do I know my salah counted? So the question people ask, rarely do you get someone ask you, brother, is salah wajib? I didn't have that question yet from anybody in the masjid. The question they're going to ask you, akhi, I prayed and I had najasa, is it sahih or not? And then you're going to look at him, akhi, salah is wajib. No, it's not going to work. He didn't ask you that question. He asked you, did it count? And most of us say, wallahu alam. You see, so we need ahkam wad'iyya. We need it. Otherwise, a person may pray 100 times. Or maybe someone might not pray at all, thinking he doesn't have to pray. So how many are there, ahkam wad'iyya? Some ulama, they list up to 8, but to be honest, they surround 5. They revolve around 5 of them, and the other 3 are ziyadat. So we'll just keep it today. We'll just talk about the 5. Number 1, sabab, cause. First, hukm wad'i is called sabab, the cause of an action. So what is the cause for the action? When does the action do? When do you have to do it? Number 2, condition, shart, or shurut. What are the conditions for the actions? One of the most important ones, the conditions. So all of us are already conditioned to know that, right? We know this. Shurut, conditions. That's called, it's from the ahkam wad'iyya. Number 3, preventatives. Al-mani' wal-mawani'. Preventatives, that which prevents an action from happening. In other words, the opposite of a condition. So you can put them parallel. Shart wal-mani'. Condition, preventative. And number 4 and number 5 go together. Number 4 is validity, as-sihha or sahih, the ruling of validity, and its polar opposite, invalidity, which is al-fasad. Or some language you use, the ulama say butlan. Something is batil, it means fasid, it means no good. Redo it. So someone tells you aqdul fasid. What is he telling you? You go return it, get your money back, you don't own it. He's telling you many things. He's not just telling you next time around. No. Aqdul fasid. You don't own it. Right? See, sometimes you misunderstand. The ulama say aqdul fasid. You're like, okay, mashallah. No, he didn't know what he just said. Sometimes even the lugha, the ulama, sometimes we have to understand what he's telling you there. Or when they say aqdul lazim, you think, what does that mean? It means you can't get out of that. I'm sorry, done deal. Right? Someone's like, subhanAllah. So this is very important, the language. So these 5 are the key. If you remember these 5, we're going to see they have a lot of benefit. Asbab or sabab, cause. Number 2, shart wal shurut, conditions. 3, preventatives, mani' al-mani' wal-mawani'. And number 4, as-sih or sahih, something's valid, and counted. And number 5, invalid, fasid or batil. And the others are 6, 7, 8. We'll leave them out for today. Because like we said, make it easy, inshallah. If I shorten the list, it's going to be easy to remember, right? If I give you more, tomorrow you're like, oh, subhanAllah, it was 5 and 5, then you became 5 and 8, I forgot. And so it's also, remember, when you look at these categories, you have to train your brain now to think. When you hear a ruling, wad'i, taklifi. Because this is how a person who does usul fiqh is going to become later on faqih. The faqih has a way of thinking. He's looking at, just like the alim aqidah or tafsir, he has a way of thinking, he has a manhaj. طيب, so far everybody's with me? Okay. Before going forward, we need to have now a rule. How do you know which one is taklifi and which one is taklif or wad'i? Like, how do I know? So we gave you the 5 and the 5, but someone may say, how do I know when something is taklifi or it's wad'i? Because I have to know. The reason why I have to know is because they have impact on the action. Let's give an example from the one we already gave. The man who prays towards the Qibla out of negligence, he didn't face far, he faced other than the Qibla out of negligence, his salah, we said, is invalid. So what do we have here? What are we working with? Wad'iyya, right? So we said his salah is wajib. He faced other than the Qibla is a condition, shart, and his salah is invalid. Butlan, yani fasid. There we go. So we got that. He missed a condition. Salah, which is wajib. He didn't have the condition. The salah became valid. Hukum, taklifi, wad'i. So this is the benefit of knowing the wad'iyah. I didn't face the qibla, my salah is invalid. And I did it out of negligence, not like I tried. The other example, a man prayed towards pictures, which is not allowed to face pictures if you honestly have a force to. Like there's no way around. Like I'm in a room, like I go to a church, or I have a room in my office, in the building. I can't pray anywhere else. That's okay. I'm talking about you just came to a room, Allahu Akbar, you didn't care, pictures in front of you. Salah is valid. Valid means sahih, that's hukm wad'i. Ma'al ithm, with sin. That's taklifi. Why is he sinful? Because he shouldn't have prayed there. But the condition, the difference between what he did and didn't do, when it comes to his prayer, it counted. We're going to talk about how come his prayer counted with a sin. Sin is taklifi. Sihha is wad'i. Differentiate. When someone's asking you, my salah counted, he's not asking you, should I have prayed there? If he turned the question around and said, should I pray in the room? We're going to say, haram akhi illa bidarura wal haja. Then that's a hukum taklifi. But if he came to you and said, akhi, I prayed in the room with the pictures, whatever reason, if he had a reason, we're going to say off the hook. No reason, ithm, taklifi, your salah sahih, wad'i. Right, mashi, go. That's how you're going to answer people. Because if someone asks, doesn't count, salah's batil, ma'al ithm. No, ma'al ithm, you have the ithm now. What kind of fatwa is that? Right? And this is what happens after. You go to the masajid with us. Wallahu bihi alim. Only Allah knows. Sometimes some of the ways people answer the question, you wonder. It's not fiqh, wala usul fiqh. Somebody may tell you it's batil, and you have to redo it. So mashallah, he went past our categories. He went to qada wal i'adah. He told the guys fasid, ma'al ithm wal i'adah. Upon i'adah, you have to repeat. MashaAllah, you give him more than he bargained for. That's not right. And that comes from what? Not understanding the mas'ala properly. Now, if you see what I'm talking about today, these are the underpinnings. Like you say, the mechanism underneath the fatawa ulama. When you read Shaykh bin Baz, wa Alamat Uthaymin, wa Al-Albani, rahimahullah al-Wadi'i, these are ulama kibar. When they pass fatawa, this is what they're using. This is the OS, operating system from which is coming the ruling. If you appreciate only the fatwa when you know the system, and if you disagree, you know where they went. But you know what happens, brothers and sisters? Sometimes we don't appreciate because we don't understand. But when the more you learn it, the more, mashallah, your fiqh will be better. Let's continue now with two principles, qawa'id, that will help us to differentiate between taklifi wal wada'i. First qa'idah, first principle. Every ruling or everything that is outside your control, everything, كل ما لا يدخل تحت قدرة المكلف. Anything that does not enter the قدرة of the mukallif, يعني the person who has taklif. Every action or anything that does not go underneath your control, or has not been commanded, or has not been commanded by Allah. Yani Allah didn't tell you to do it. So there's two parts here. Everything that's not underneath your control, nor has Allah told you to do it, Allah has not commanded you to come with it, then it is considered hukm wad'i. Pay attention to these two. Anything that's not in your control, or has not been commanded by Allah for you to do it, it is considered hukm wad'i. And then the opposite. Everything that is in your capacity, and Allah told you to do it, then it's taklifi. Okay, we're going to repeat it again. Every action or anything that doesn't go on, that is not in your control or your capacity, or Allah has not commanded you to do it, then it's hukm wad'i. It's legislative ruling. And the opposite, everything underneath your capacity, and Allah told you to do it. كل ما يدخل تحت قدرة المكلف ويؤمر بتحصيله. Anything goes underneath your capacity, and Allah told you and commanded you to do it, فَالتَّكْلِيفِ. It is legally a ruling of legality, or ruling of legally responsible people. So what is the difference between then wad'i wa taklifi? One of the differences? Anyone can summarize that? One of the differences between the two? The ahkam taklifiyya are Number one, underneath your ability, and Allah told you to do it. Whereas wad'i, there either it's not under your ability or Allah never told you to do it. So sometimes something can be wad'i, it can be wad'i in the sense Allah wants you to do it. Okay? But then if Allah never told you to do it, it's not wad'i anymore. So we're going to see that this is very important to know the difference. Why? Somebody is sinful when what? When he doesn't do ahkam taklifiyya. He's sinful then. Allah told you to pray and you didn't pray. But Allah never told you to make sure the time for salah comes in. Example, wad'i, zawal al-shams is salat al-dhuhr. All the awqat al-salawat, all the salah timings are from ahkam wad'iyya. Allah never told you move the sun to the dhuhr time, then pray. Nor can you do that. So what do? When the sun hits to pass the zenith, dhuhr, I have to pray now. So that's wad'i, the timing for salah. Another example, reaching the nisab for zakat. Reaching the nisab for zakat. So how much is the nisab for zakat, roughly? Like $800, roughly. I read recently, it's around that time, amount. Is it wajib upon me to reach that amount? So we're going to ask the question, Allah tell everybody to reach the nisab? No. Can I reach the nisab? Yes. But Allah didn't command me to. So if I did reach the nisab, because I'm saving, and a year passed, now you pay. See, if it's now, or see where we're going with this. People ask the question, brother, I didn't know, I didn't have to pay with zakat. No problem. Hukum taklifi, you're off the hook. Hukum wad'i, let's pay back. You see this? How many questions we get like this? Brother, I didn't pay. It's like a CRA, right? They do this. They never forgive you. Allah, why didn't He let us off the hook? Whose benefit? The poor. So I'll give you an example. Somebody says, brother, I just learned zakat is wajib. No problem. You're not sinful. You're ignorant. But what do you have to do? Because hukum wad'i, the nisab, is one of the asbab. That's what it's called, asbab. For zakat, please pay it. Or you call it shart. You can call it both. Please pay it now. That helps people to do two things. Off the hook, that's justice. I didn't know. But the money is owing for the poor. Imagine we told them, you're off the hook and don't pay. Some ulama hold that view, but the stronger view is you have to. The reason why is because the benefit is missing now. Maybe some of us are under that impression because zakat money, a lot of people are not paying it. We're all juhal, huh? MashaAllah. Some of us will say, I didn't know, brother. It's like, well, brother, you have a lot of money, right? A lot of people, this is a problem. It's a big problem. So we learn now what wad'i is. Not under your control, or Allah never told you to do it. طيب, what's an example of hukum taklifi? Tahara, wudu, salah, hajj, all ibadat. Anything Allah wants you to do, told you to do it. Whether it be wajib or mustahab, is taklifi. And then the opposite too, Allah told you to stay away from it, or He disliked it, is taklifi. Don't do it. Do it. Recommend to do it. Dislike to do it. All of it is considered legally responsible. It's because you can make a ruling. So one way to remember, did Allah command me to do it? Can I do it? And then last one to help you, can you call the wajib, haram, mustahab? If you can call it that, that means Allah told you to do it, and you have the capacity to do it. If someone said, I don't have the capacity to do it, but Allah told me to do it, we tell them you don't have to do it. Somebody lost his mind, he has to pray salah, but he has what? Mani', he has a preventative. You see, he's supposed to pray. But I never saw anyone telling somebody who doesn't have mental capacity to pray because he's off the hook. Because you have when we say you have the qudrah, we're going to talk about next week what that means. So today we're talking wad'iyya, so we're going to stay there. So repeat, ahkam wad'iyya, then any action Allah commanded us. Sorry, it's not underneath our control or capability, nor has Allah commanded us. But what is it? Allah made it though a sign for an action. So who put this wada'? Who placed it? Allah. Wada' means to place. Wada'ahu Allah. Allah put it there as a sign to let you know time to pray. To let you know your salah counted. To let you know you don't have to pray. To let you know your salah didn't count. To let you know your marriage is invalid. To let you know you got to remarry. So hikmah, see? The wada'iyya are very important. So they resemble lots of the legal stuff we have today in the world. We have a legal theory, like a law. It's wada'iyya a lot of times, right? But the ahkam taklifiyya has to do with the person's in front of Allah yawm al-qiyamah. So now that we understand this, today we're only going to talk about ahkam wada'iyya. So make it easy. Just those. And I'm going to give you lots of examples, and we're going to summarize. And next week we'll do taklifiyya. Each one of these things so far, so to get the map in your head, we said ahkam taklifiyya are 5. So next week we have to go down the line. Wajib, what is it? How do you know it's ruling? How do you know it's wajib? How do you know it's mustahab? Those things. We'll go each one of them with their definitions and their principles. Then this week we're going through the first 5. Sabab, cause, condition, shart, mani', preventative, valid, invalid. That's all we're going to do. And what we need to do then, we need to look at each one of them to figure out what they mean. And then apply our examples from the beginning, and inshallah it will make sense. So far everybody's with me. The difference between wada'iyya and taklifiyya, I'll talk about at the end. Let's keep going, because I'll talk about it later. Let's start with the first one. Sabab wal asbab. Cause and causes. What's a cause? The ulama, when they talk about cause, they're talking about that which, anything, which when this thing is present, anything, in which when this thing is present, the ruling is present. So if you wanted to make it very simple, anything, which if you have it, you have the ruling. So for example, something equals ruling. Whatever that thing is, if it's there, the ruling is there. If it's not there, the ruling is not there. This is called sabab. Hence, many of the ulama, they said sabab is one of the definitions or synonyms for illah. Illah. I didn't talk about illah today, but you will see the relationship. So, easy way to remember, because when you look at the books of fiqh, the way that they describe it, like it sounds very difficult, the definition. So, we're going to make it easy. Anything which, if it is present, the ruling is present. If it's absent, the ruling is absent. Okay? So, the cause is called a cause. So, if there's a cause, there's an effect. And the effect is the ruling. That's why cause and effect is like how analogy works, right? Right? Asl, fara', illa, like that. Okay. Now, we said just a minute ago, the causes, some of them are under your control and some are not. Hence, the ulama say causes, again repeating, causes, anything, if it's present, the action is present, or the ruling is present. If it's absent, the ruling is absent. So, there's 2 types of it. Number 1, the one is underneath your control, or you can do it. And the second type, the one you cannot do it, or is not in your control. And we just saw the example. So cause, there's 2 types. One in which is underneath your control, and you can do it. And another one which is outside your control, or you're not supposed to do it, or you can't do it. Just like the example I already gave you. Does that remove? So again, the good question. If something's underneath your control or not, can I still call it a sabab? Yes, you can still call it a sabab. Because remember the principle, anything which is not in your control, or Allah never told you to do it. I want to remember that part, or. So some of them, you can do it, but Allah never told you to do it. And some causes, you can't do it even if you try to do it. Clear? Bringing the sun to the place to pass the zenith, you can't do it. So it's a sabab for salah, we're going to see. And some of them you can do it, like reaching the money for zakat, how much you need for zakat, but Allah never told you to do it. There, simple. So sometimes, for example, someone might say, should I go to work, make money, save money to pay zakat? No, you don't have to. But if you have saved money for other reasons and you actually nisab, now you're going to have to pay zakat. So the reason why the ulama divide these 2, just so you know that you can't just discount some causes. Let's give the example of number 1. Sun reaching sunset. Maghrib time is outside your control. When you see the sun setting, you know it's time for Maghrib. That's why it's called sabab. And the effect is Maghrib time. Pray Maghrib, it's wajib. When the sun hasn't set, there's no sabab for Maghrib, hence Maghrib is haram to pray. When it sets, wajib to pray. Before it sets, it's haram to pray. You guys with me? That's why people always ask, should I pray now? We're going to say, check the sabab, the time for salah. And that's why time of salah, when you guys study salah, what do we call salah? A condition of prayer. You could have also called it a sabab of prayer. Same thing, you got it. And you can see that sometimes the sabab are called shurut, and sometimes they're grouped together. It's okay. Because the ulama, the division they do, they always matter as much as what matters is the outcome. An example of a cause you can do, but you don't have to. Traveling. Traveling is a cause for shortening the salah. Safar is a sabab liqasr. Safar, traveling, is a cause for shortening the prayer. Or you could say illah. Right? Today they asked that question. Someone goes for safar lima'siyah. He's doing something haram. Can he shorten his prayer? Al-Jawab, the answer he gave was yes. Why? The sabab al-qasr is safar. Now it doesn't matter if it's ma'siyah or ta'a. Al-hukm yaduru ma'illatihi wa sababih. We're going to come back. There we go. That's the fiqh. That's the fiqh, the way of a faqih. You're going to say, what you do? You traveled, you passed the city threshold, sabab equals hukum. Khalas, qasr. Someone says, I'm going to go to Toronto Pearson, and I want to pray shorten. We're going to say, brother, you're still in the city. No sabab, no hukum. But the question I ask you, is it safar wajib? I chose to be safar. So if I made choice to pray, to go for safar, I can do qasr. So someone will say, how if I try to do that and I want to, shorten the prayer? Allah knows you. Come on. I never heard someone who's trying to escape salah and is worrying about doing qasr. That's probably a better question. If you're at that level, you're trying to shorten salah, come on. You're already getting 2 out of 4. Just do 4. The first who's doing it, then do qasr. Wala jam'a. I already said it 4. Anyone who's going to Vegas, he's not doing qasr, wala jam'a, guys. So we have to be more serious. But some people, they ask that question, we're trying to, okay, listen. Can't trick Allah. Next, let's give some examples. Reaching the nisab for zakat. What is it? Wad'i or taklifi? Wad'i, why? So, we have to go back to our principle. Why is it wad'i? Allah didn't tell you to. There's no dalil we have that. Okay? And number 2, now that it's wad'i, what's the outcome? I reached the nisab, therefore the hukum is zakat is due, wajib. Another example. Somebody reached the state of janaba, sexual defilement, or major impurity. That's a sabab for ghusl. Why? Because janaba is a sabab for the ruling of ghusl. Ghusl becomes wajib because you reach the sabab. It's out in my control. I can reach a state janaba, halal or haram way, but I'm not supposed to necessarily. Allah didn't open it. It's mubah. If you do it halal way, haram, you do haram way. So for example, someone identifies with his spouse, Allah generally recommend that. But if someone did it, or someone didn't do it, woke up with wet dream, sabab, hukum. Another example. Somebody goes and he accidentally breaks somebody's car. Okay, he's taking the car out and he broke it. Or he took the car out and he was negligent and he broke it. So now we have the sabab, right? Which is the itlaf. It's the destruction. And the hukum, ad-daman, warranty or paying back is wajib now. Because I broke the car. Okay, so now let's go back to a good example. Somebody was sleepwalking. And he went and he broke something. What's the hukum taklifi? He's sleepwalking, he's in his sleep. He's not sinful because he has no taklif, he was na'im. He has to pay back. Okay, see this? We're going to see this. I can't say, Ma'alish, I wasn't there. Yeah, tell that to my cup. It's broken. This is the deen. Scenario 2, I said, a man divorced his wife when she's not on her menses nor intimacy. And she didn't know about it. Is a divorce count? What's the cause for the divorce? The pronouncement. So a person pronounced it, he met the conditions. So sabab is there. Wal-hukum, talaqat waqa'at. It happened. The woman knowing or not knowing is not the hukum. It has nothing to do with the hukum. And that was bad. You shouldn't not tell your wife that you didn't divorce her. Right? Because you're going to have to pay during the iddah. Right? Some brothers, you're just going to say, I'm not going to tell her. So when are you going to send the money? He's taking something else. He's not even there. Well, you don't pay the iddah. How do you know she's pregnant? It's 1 year, brother. So that's why we got. So if you're thinking this way, you're already in a bad state, right? But you should tell him. If someone said, my wife didn't know, it happened. It happened, but the sabab wal hukum. That's what we're trying to say. Because every time the sabab is there, the hukum is there. That's the point we're trying to learn. That's why it's called sabab. Sabab, hukum. No sabab, no hukum. And if you understand this now, ahkam wad'iyya are very important in letting us know when the action has to be done. The next condition now, or next one, sharat, was shurut. So now we finished asbab. So sabab is when the cause for the action. I forgot one more principle, sorry. Asbab al-Shar'iyya, legislative rulings, can only be found from the Quran and Sunnah. So you cannot make up a sabab for an action, a cause. It has to come from the Quran and Sunnah. So the Quran and Sunnah tell us when something is a cause or not a cause. Everybody's with me? So how do you know ghusl, the cause for ghusl al-janaba? Quran and Sunnah told us. How do I know that reaching the nisab is a cause for zakat? Quran and Sunnah told us. So therefore, asbab al-shar'iyya are tawqifiyya. Just remember that, tawqifiyya. Never, cannot make it up. Just like today in science, you can't make up a cause and effect, right? And in Sharia, you can't make up cause and effect. And it's very important because this is show you that the foundation of ilm shari is qawiyya. It's qawi, it's strong. Just like science, we have to prove things. For Quran and Sunnah to prove it. You can't just make it up. Let's talk about shurut and conditions. What's a condition? In simple terms, is anything in which you need it for a ruling to be there. You need it in order to do an action or to do something. But if you have it, you didn't have the action yet. So the easiest way to remember this, it's something which you have to do or you must fulfill before an action. Without it, you couldn't do the action. But if you met the condition, you're still not done with the action. So an example would be, I made wudu for salah. I have one of the conditions. Have I prayed salah yet? No, that's a condition. You need it to for an action, but when you have it, you're not done yet. Now keep going. So imagine someone just makes wudu 5 times a day. MashaAllah, but you didn't pray anything. But if you pray without the salah, without wudu, you won't count anyways. So the difference between the sabab and the shart is what? Whenever you have a cause, the action is immediately there. But whenever you have a condition, it doesn't mean the action is there. Is that easier way to remember? If I have a condition, I may or may not have the action. That's the easiest way to remember it. And the reason we're using very simple words is because it's easy to remember. If I have a condition, I may or may not have the action. I made wudu, but I didn't pray yet. Somebody else made wudu and he prayed. See? We both have wudu, but he prayed, he didn't. Whereas a cause, when it's there, the hukum is due. You have to do it now. طيب, scholars, they say now, when it comes to the conditions, we know conditions are needed because every action has conditions. That's the beautiful thing we're going to learn. Every action, before you do it, you must ask the key question. What are its shurut? What are its conditions? There are 2 or 3 types of conditions. I'm only going to talk about 2 of them because the third one has not to do with us right now. Conditions are usually divided by the ulama into 2 types. Conditions are 2 types. Number 1, conditions of obligation. Shurut al-wujub. Conditions of obligation. Which means conditions which tell us who is wajib on the action. Who has to do it. Shart or shurut wujub. Upon who is salah due. That's called conditions of obligation. And the second one, which is more important for us, conditions of validity. Shurut al-sihha. That's the one you need to usually study more. Shurut al-sihha are the conditions for validity. Without it, no action counted. The easy way to remember these 2, shurut al-wujub or shurut al-sihha. Conditions of validity sometimes and often include the conditions of obligation. So some ulama do not divide it. They count it as one. That makes your life easier. Second benefit, most of us already meet the conditions of obligation. So you don't have to hear about it. What are they? Islam, for example, aql, insanity, bulugh, puberty, and sometimes for tamyiz, and some things you might have other than that. Right? Hurriya, sometimes freedom. They add other ones. But most of us meet the major ones. So the reason why it's important for any action to count, you need to have the conditions. Call it whatever you want to call it. With the obligation ones, validity ones, just call it the conditions. So study the conditions. Conditions always come before an action. That's the benefit we have to remember. They come before an action. Example now. Purification for salah. What is that? Tahara in relation to salah. Number 1, hukum wad'i. Why? How come it's hukum wad'i? It's a shart, but Allah also told us to do it. And I have the capacity to do it. So it's taklifi, but also we're going to see you need to do it for the action. So it can be, even though it's underneath my taklif, it's still something for the condition. Because before the salah, do you do wudu? Yes. So shart lis salah. What's the ruling on wudu? wajib. Wudu and salah, wajib. So sometimes when we call something wada'i, it doesn't mean you don't have to do it. Sometimes we confuse yourself. Oh, it's wada'i. No. Wada'i still means you have to do it sometimes because Allah told you. All we want to know is if it's called wada'i, is that you have to need it. So conditions come when? Before an action. Pillars, they come when? In the actions. Everyone can memorize that? Pillars come in the action. And pillar conditions before an action. Another example. Somebody, let's give the example here. Somebody prayed salah before the time entered. So the time entering is a condition of salah. If you didn't have it, your action is absent. So we're going to go back to the definition. Conditions are you need it for the action to count, but if you have it, you don't have the action yet. So always the conditions, you have to meet them. That's the way to remember them. Conditions, meet them. Okay, meet them. If you didn't meet them, you don't have the action. So an example, I prayed the whole salah, but the last rak'ah or in tashahhud al-akhir, I broke my wudu. Can I say, I did 4 almost? No, sorry. Because conditions, you have to have them from the beginning to the end of the action. That's another thing. Conditions have to come from the beginning all the way till the end, and you need them before. You can't miss it. Okay, the ulama, when they divide the conditions into 2 types, wujub or sihha, we said the relationship is simple. Many of the conditions, almost all the conditions we know are conditions of validity, but some of them are conditions of obligation. So many of us memorized or studied the conditions of prayer by Shaykh al-Islam Muhammad Abdul Wahab, right? He mentions how many conditions for salah? And 9. So what's the first one? What kind of condition is that? Shart, wujub. And what else he mentions? Aql, shart, wujub. What tamyiz? Shart. It's interesting, right? It's tamyiz because you can't reach 7. You gotta reach. You can't say 3 I'm 7. No, tamyiz. And tamyiz is special because salah is one of the actions we needed. And the rest of them are the shurut al-sihha. You don't have to worry about division. Just remember, what is the condition of the action? Did you do it? If you did, the action counts. If you didn't have it and you did the action, invalid. The opposite of conditions then are preventatives. And this is the second last point for today. And last one will be validity because it all comes together around. So if you know what a condition is, you have to avoid the preventatives. Preventatives are anything which is the opposite of a condition. With the presence of a preventative, the action is invalid. It's invalid. And it's wada'i because Allah never told you to do it. And oftentimes it's not in your control. Oftentimes not in your control. Example, a woman has menses, or it's on her menses, a monthly cycle. What kind of ruling is that? Hukum wada'i because it's a mani' al-salah. A woman has to pray. That's under her ability. Allah told you to pray, aqimu salah, but I can't pray because I have a preventative. So when you have preventatives, you have to wait for them to go away. So the rule is preventatives must be erased. Conditions must be met. Always remember that. Preventatives must be prevented and conditions must be met. Another example, zakat and dain, debt. Zakat, its condition is reaching the nisab, or you call the sabab. Its mani' and preventative is debt. Now the khilaf ulama, big difference between ikhtilaf, but many scholars say, depends how much debt you have. But if you have a debt, you have a mani'. So I'm supposed to pay zakat. I would pay zakat, but unfortunately I have a debt, so I'm off the hook. See? Another example. A woman wants to get married, but she's in her iddah. Can she get married? No, because the ruling on marriage, or depends on what ruling you take, but most scholars mention mustahab at the very least, and it can change. And then she's in her iddah, mani'. You can't. Someone is in a state of ihram, muhrim, on hajj. He wants to go hunt. Got a mani', right? You can hunt after. Another example, junoon. Someone lost his mind, and he wants to make wudu. So condition of salah is aql. The mani' of zakat is insanity. So how do you know them? From the Quran and Sunnah. And it's usually the opposite. The opposite. So when you understand now the summary for an action to count in terms of it being accepted, because now we're going to talk about the last 2 categories, as-sahih wal-fasid. The whole point of this is that we all know salat is wajib. Nobody is discussing that today. So next week we're going to talk about how do you know Salah is wajib, not mustahab. That's next week. Salah is wajib. All right, I'm with you. I prayed Salah Isha today. I just want to know whether it counted or not. Someone may ask you, brother, I prayed Salah and now I'm getting the waswasa. So what are we going to tell him? Brother, did you meet the conditions? Number one. That's the first one. This is how you're going to answer it. Number one, did you meet the conditions of Salah? He says yes. Number two, did you stay from all the preventatives? Number two, did you fulfill all the pillars? Number three, equals Sahih, your Salah counts. Assalamu alaikum. That's it. That's it. Remember those three, brothers. Someone did the conditions, avoided the preventatives, and came with arkan. Now some of the ulama, they add wujud asbab as well. But as we saw, the asbab sometimes are considered shurut, or sometimes they're grouped together, so you can put them all together like that. But these are the main ones. Did you meet the conditions? Did you meet the pillars? Because pillars are the foundation of action. Why do we put wajibat? Because I could have messed up by accident. Right? Of course, if someone didn't do it on purpose, it's a little different story. I'm talking about accident. Okay, we're not going to ask him that. We're going to ask you, did you do pillars? Did you leave all the preventatives? Your Salah, al-asl, the origin, sahihah. You counted. Now, if someone says, I need to tell you some more, like I did this and that, and this and that is different. But because if he starts telling you what he did, then you'll be like, okay, you know, that doesn't count. Like for example, he said, Brak wudu, so, or I talked in Salah. Oh, so there's difference, see? And also you can add one more, if you want to help you, preventatives, and you also avoided nullifiers. Because nullifiers are a type of preventative. It's going to prevent the Salah from existing, but it's something you do. Nullifiers is the opposite of the pillars. So if you remember these four then, I did what I'm supposed to. Out before the Salah, condition. I avoided what I'm supposed to avoid before and during Salah, preventative, mani'. I did what I'm supposed to do in Salah, arkan. I avoided what I'm supposed to avoid, nawaqid. That equals sahih. Valid sound counts. If you miss any one of these, the action becomes fasid. Fasid. See, it's not very hard. That's it. The language can be complicated. Examples are many. I went and I did a business transaction. I want to know it counted. What we're going to ask him? Did you meet the conditions of the contract? Shurut al-bay' wa arkan and its pillars. And you didn't do any preventatives or any nullifiers or anything haram. Usually then counts. Someone did same thing, marriage contract. Someone did the hajj. Someone did like this. That's why the ulama always prioritize shurut wa arkan. You always wonder why they keep bringing those. Because you need them for the action to be existent, and you have to avoid what you have to avoid. From this, we go back to, and maybe next week we'll have to explain this more, the scenario number, we did scenario number 1. Somebody prayed towards the Qibla, so he missed the shart. So Salah is invalid, and he missed a condition without reason. He was negligent. If you missed a condition, right, after trying to, the Qibla, then scholars usually exempt someone because he tried, he was ignorant. And we're going to get to that in a second. Another issue will be someone praying towards pictures. We said that's haram, taklifi. Wad'i, why did it count? Who can answer that? Why the person's Salah counted? Al-Lajn to Da'ima, others, they say Salah counted when you pray in a picture, room full of pictures. Why? Conditions, hypothetically, you met them? Preventatives were missing. You did the pillars, inshallah, also obligations, everything else. You praying towards the picture, is that a shart? Is it a mani'? Is it a sabab? No. It's all sahih. Mal ithm. It's still sinful, but that's the problem, brother. Some people, they put something which is not a sabab, they made a sabab. Something not a shart, they made a shart. Something which is not a mani', they made it. You need dalil. No condition except with dalil. Tawqifiyya. No such thing as sabab illa bidalil. No such thing prevented illa bidalil. So if you don't have a proof for that. But we're going to see later, sometimes you can do something haram in the Salah and you actually do nullify it. Because you fell into a prohibition that's impacting the condition. Or a prohibition that impacts the nature of Salah. That's for another time, we'll talk about that. So someone may say, I prayed Salah and I was eating my lunch. My Salah is invalid. We're all going to say, why? Why? I have the conditions. I didn't get preventatives. What did he do wrong? He nullified it. Why does it count? Because this goes against the maqam of Salah. Salah is conversation with Allah. What is this? Adab, eating a sandwich. So the ulama say batil this one. So we're going to see later, there are some things, the rule we're going to see, from every prohibition doesn't mean invalidation. Awam, they have this problem. Every time something haram doesn't count, ya akhi, wad'i wa taklifi. What is the dalil? Why are you going there? We have to prove. The reason why, because they're anxious. I get it. But now we have to teach them. Listen, if it's not connected, you can't jump there. That's why the ulama didn't differentiate. It's bi'ilm. Whereas an Ami person might say, I have to repeat the salah just in case. He's not held accountable for his ignorance, but that was not the right thing. Last point for today. What is the difference between ahkam wad'iyya taklifiyya in terms of their summary? Scholars say ahkam wad'iyya and taklifiyya have major differences. And this was mentioned by Imam al-Shinqiti in Mudhakkira fi Usul al-Fiqh. And so he mentions some of the differences. The difference is, firstly, ahkam wad'iyya, they don't have to do with, like we said, wajib, mustahab, that kind of stuff. So it's not to do with you have to do or you have a choice to do. They're more to do with either something is a cause for something, a condition for something. So the topic is different. So wad'i, legislative rulings have a different topic. They have to do with validity, invalidity, time to pray, not time to pray, condition, non-condition. That's what ahkam, which is legislative. Whereas taklifiyya, we're talking about rulings of you should have done it, you didn't do it, you have to do it, you did it wrong, you made a sin, like this. Second difference, ahkam wad'iyya, right? Ahkam wad'iyya, scholars say that ignorance is not a udhr for ahkam wad'iyya. It's not an udhr, but it's an udhr it's an excuse for ahkam taklifiyya. Okay? So an example, I overslept, salah time, and I woke up late. Hukum taklifi, I have no ithm, I have a udhr shar'i, I sleep. Hukum now for the wad'i, salah is still wajib on me, taklifi, I missed the sabab, but I still have to pray again. Go and pray. Still have to pray. Because the time is still there or time is absent, you have new time because you woke up late. So you still have to go on. You can't say I was ignorant there. Hukum taklifi, you're off the hook. But then another example I gave, the person who slept accidentally broke someone's something. Taklifi, no sin. Wad'i, replace it. See, that's an example. Another one, someone didn't pay zakat, he didn't know the ruling. Hukum taklifi, no sin. Wad'i, you have to pay it back. Because the sabab is there. You guys follow me? So we always ask the question, sabab is still there. Another example. We said that ahkam wad'iyya have to do with, you can be with qudra or no qudra, but ahkam taklifiyya always have to do with qudra and amr, command. Hence the fuqaha, most of the books of Usul al-Fiqh you guys came across, they spend most of the time ahkam wad'iyya. Taklifiyya. Why? Because that's what Allah commanded you usually with. Do this, don't do that. So most of the fuqaha, they spend time with that because it has to do with taklif. That's the asl of ibadah. Taklif. You have aql, you have qudra, you have to do it. So example of this would be, a child has an account the parents have opened for him for their savings, for their future education. Does a zakat due on the child's money? It reaches the nisab? The answer is yes. Taklifi, there's no taklif on children. Wad'i, sabab for the zakat has been reached. See? So parents will pay for him, even though he doesn't have the ability. So sometimes we can see even then that these issues come there. So the most important thing would be, a lot of times when it comes to the udhr bijahal, the excuse of ignorance, it has to do with the issues of taklif. Because Allah is just. Also we know that when it comes to taklifi issues, this is where the accountability is there. Accountability is based on taklif, yawm al-qiyamah. That's why the big discussion is taklif. I'm liable from yawm al-qiyamah if I prayed or didn't pray. Allah, I'm not going to ask from al-qiyamah, did the Satan come in or not? It's going to be, it came in, you didn't pray. So that's when we can see that taklif is very important. So that's a summary for today, inshallah. Next week we'll do ahkam, taklifiyya in more detail. And we'll go through each one of them. And the way to allow us to understand where we're going to go with this, we said there's 5. So what do we have to learn now? We're going to have to learn these 5. What are their indications? How do you know something's wajib? What's its wordings? And what's the wordings for mustahab, for example? When you have something wajib, what kind of texts are we going to look for? So this is where it gets a little more like legally, and we're going to give it again. We're going to begin with some examples, explain them, then go from there. Anyone have any quick questions? Yes. So good. The brother is saying that some of the ulama say the person who travels from ma'siyah, he doesn't count. The qasr is not allowed for him because the sabab is missing. Because the sabab is supposed to be, because they say safar, shortening for safar, for travel, for shortening prayers is a rukhsa. We didn't talk about it today. It's not a azima. So rukhas are allowed li'udhr. You don't have a udhr, hence you have no sabab, hence you have no hukm. But the other opinion is, it's a sabab, and you can't remove the sabab, because as soon as I traveled, I'm a musafir, and that's the illah. Al-qasr li-musafir, as long as I'm traveling, even though I'm doing wrong. So taklif is sinful, so that's a stronger view. So, but you can see the other logic, where they went. So we didn't talk about rukhsa and taklif, we'll talk about dirib. Today we kept it 5, we don't want to go more. Because more are going to be like, and that's another problem. Some people, when you talk about stuff, kathra taqsimat, they get lost. Don't get lost, brother, it's not hard. Categorization is beautiful. It saves you time. I know some people get shocked, they keep making these charts and like, subhanAllah, my brain, right now, maybe your bandwidth is very low. Later it's going to get good, inshallah. It's going to be very strong. You're going to remember all this. Because you need to, in order to be able to take on the rulings. So if you notice that, sometimes you tell them, and this many categories, that many categories, like, oh, subhanAllah, that's too many categories. But the problem is like, the nature of fiqh is such, because the rulings are many. And the beauty is that if you just focus on the definitions, it's not hard. So right now you go home, you review. It's lazim, يعني, لابد, يعني, especially for usul al-fiqh, you have to. You have to review. And if you're more serious, you do bahath. You go research hukm and try to see the application. And we're going to keep going because otherwise it doesn't stay. Okay, any last questions, inshallah? Yes. So 2 types of asbab, we said, one which is in your control and one which is not. The one which is in your control is one which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala commanded you to do it. And it's in my control, then that's going to become taklifi. But if it's in my control, but Allah never told me to do it, it's still wad'i. So an example, I can go for safar. I have the ability to travel. But Allah never told me to travel or not. Allah says, if you travel. If you travel, that's up to you. Takhir. So it's mubah to travel. As we'll see later, how do you know something is mubah? It's based on takhir. I have a choice. I want to travel now. But someone can say, akhi, you have to qasr because you have to travel. No, travel's up to me. Sometimes I have to travel for other things. So because the wad'i, it's out of your control, immediately. Or it's in my control, but there's no proof you have to do it. It's when you do it, now the ruling is present. So that helps us to know that some things Allah didn't even let you do it. A woman having menses is not her in control. It comes when it comes. When the menses come, preventative for salah. When the menses come, certain rulings. So that shows you, menses, janaba. Sabab, hukum. Woman didn't choose that. But if she did choose, she took a pill. Okay, she took a pill, she brought the menses. Now who can answer the question? A woman took a pill, now she's menstruating. She's going to be in state of haid? نعم السبب يجوز مع حكم يجوز مع يدور مع سببه. Sabab is there. I took the pill, it came. I took the pill, I stopped it. So as long as the ulama says halal for the condition, I'm just saying someone did it. You can't say, okay, no. You can't divorce sabab from the hukum. Remember, sabab hukum. The question you're going to ask is, why you do it? Right? Like a good question. Why you did that? I won't go for umrah. Okay. Why you did it? I don't know. I just felt like doing it. It's like, no, that's not good. You see? But if someone's going to say, go pray salah, she has hayd, you see that? So you have to ask that, remember that point. Sabab hukum. But the benefit of taking that, not every time something is a sabab or a shart, it has to be based on Allah's command. I could do it. So the ulama say, if you want to know the asbab, you have to study them from the evidences, the root causes. Because otherwise you can make up causes, right? And that's dangerous, because then you're going to put burden on people. That's why the Sharia has made things easy. Imagine if Allah didn't make so many asbab for everything. Because otherwise it gets very difficult. Right? So hopefully it makes sense. Wallahu a'lam. Yes? So the ruling of fighting in jihad or a battle, the rule of command is more complicated. Because it has to look at whether this war itself is wajib or not. Obeying is in that which is wajib, mustahab. But then when it comes to the wajib, and then the udhr for it. So we're not going to say that it's wajib, we have to go, because it depends. What kind of battle is this? Is it shari'i, is it not shari'i? So it's a little more complicated, that one. Yeah. Qasr, yeah. Qasr, anytime you do safar, qasr is there. Anytime, doesn't matter what it is. You went outside looking at the grass. You just went across the border. Sabab, right? Sahaba, if they passed the city by Umar for sa'a, he made qasr. Sa'a. So sometimes I'm traveling, I don't Toronto. Qadarullah. Right? So Qadarullah, I bet you someone was just driving and just Qadarullah, he kept going down the 401, he ended up somewhere else. Now salat time comes. Sabab ma'al hukm, yani you're musafir now. You didn't even attend it. Maybe you just, Allahu Akbar, you got lost. And this happens a lot. If I'm not in Toronto now, sabab al-hukm. That's it. And this is why it's important. Allah connected to make it easy. And we're going to see qasr is a rukhsa. Once something's a rukhsa, you can't make it more complicated than it is. We studied that in Masah. When Allah makes something allowance, you don't make it tighter by making more conditions. And that's one of the things that Brother Hamza was talking about. Some ulama say that rukhsa asl li safar li qasr is a rukhsa. You can't make it tasdeed, make it more difficult. But yeah, just remember that. Sabab hukm. That's our lesson today, right? Sabab hukm. Or it's like illa hukm. Yes, last one.
Is an intention required for safar so that
so who can answer that? Is intention required for safar? Is the intention required for a safar for the hukm to be there? No, because the sabab is there. Al-hukm yuduru ma'a sabab wa illati. For example, someone gets an alcohol bottle. What's the illah or the sabab for the tahrim of khamr? Al-iskar. It makes your mind lose. So, khamr, this bottle, is sat in my fridge too long, it became khamr. Right? Randomly, I didn't do anything. I have no niyyah. Now I know it's khamr, bismillah. I'm going to drink it. I hope not, inshallah. I say, hey, I don't niyyah, I don't know. It was just brewing there. Right? We're going to say the sabab is there. That's the key. Why? Because sometimes you could do it with a choice. I went to travel. Niyyah. That's what difference between niyyah, it's a taklifi. Right? You need the niyyah for an ibadah to count. The safar ibadah? Nah. It's not an ibadah by itself. It can be ibadah, it can be just mubah. But the key where I'm talking about sabab hukum and a muwani also. For example, I was a musafir on the way back from Toronto and I entered the city before I got the chance to pray my asr shortened. How much I pray asr now? Anybody? I was supposed to pray on the plane. I was going to pray 2 rak'ah, but the plane landed in Pearson before I got a chance. And now I'm at 4. Khalas. Mani', the sabab is gone. Khalas, back to 4. But had a niyyah. It's too bad. That shows you the importance of this point of sabab al-shart. Just, it helps us to know, like, when I can't do something, how I'm going to do it. And the reason why it's important is because, like, right now, we know, and because we're talking about safar a lot, the safar and sabab of the safar, the qasr is a safar. To shorten is to travel. When you're traveling, it's just that. You're going to pray either full or shorten. Shorten is a preferred way and it's sunnah way. Some people say you have to, but this is a different opinion. But there's no third option, which is no salah. I have to tell the awam this. Awam, the thing, when you travel, safar is a sabab for no salah. Doesn't exist for fiqh. We don't know the hukum. So some of the awam, their whole flight, he didn't know salah because he says salah is only on the land. I have to adjust that. Alamat al-Shinqiti has a risala, you can read it. And he wrote it about the permissibility of praying on the plane. And amongst the earliest first scholars ever to go in detail to respond to some of the doubts some of the Maliki scholar earlier mentioned that you can't pray salah on the plane. But maybe some people are doing this still, I don't know. So you have to tell them, safar for qasr, not safar, no salah. Same with Eid. Eid is not a sabab for not praying. I don't know, because Eid comes sometimes, or wedding. His wedding today, you know. I don't know what that means. Subhanallah, we have to train the people. No, it doesn't work like that. May Allah make it easy. Inshallah, any other question we'll take after. Subhanallah, bihamdika, ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta, astaghfiruka wa atubu ilaik.